You have seen them your entire life, on cathedral ceilings, on greeting cards, on the walls of nurseries, soft, golden, harmless. But here is what they never showed you. Every single human being in the ancient record who encountered one of these beings fell to the ground unable to move. Prophets lost the color in their hair. Warriors fainted before a word was spoken. And the very first thing, without exception, every single time, these beings had to say was not a greeting. It was an emergency command to keep the human heart from stopping. What you have been shown your entire life is not an angel. It is a replacement, a carefully constructed substitute built over centuries, designed to make the most terrifying intelligence in the ancient record safe enough to put on a Christmas card. Tonight, we take that card and turn it over. Stay with me. This is going to change what you see when you close your eyes. There is an image burned into the Western imagination. A soft creature with golden curls, a round and rosy face, tiny wings sprouting from its shoulders like an afterthought. You have seen it on greeting cards, on the ceilings of cathedrals, on the walls of nurseries where children sleep without fear. We gave this creature a name. We called it an angel. And in doing so, we committed one of the greatest acts of historical falsification the world has ever known. Because the beings described in the ancient record bear absolutely no resemblance to that image. Not in form, not in scale, not in the effect they produce on every human being who survives an encounter with them. What the biblical witnesses describe is something that breaks the mind before it can even begin to process what it is seeing. And the first clue that we have been lied to is hiding in plain sight. In the very first thing every single one of these beings says, the moment it appears. But we will get to that. For now, consider the halo, that elegant ring of gold hovering above the heads of Renaissance angels. It looks like a symbol of peace, of holiness, of divine warmth. But trace it back far enough, and you will find it is not a ring at all. It is a crown, a solar crown, worn by emperors and sun gods across the ancient Mediterranean world, Helios, Apollo, Caesar. It was a symbol of raw, radiating power. The early Christians did not paint angels with wings for the first 300 years of the faith. They did not need the wings to communicate the message. The wings came later, borrowed from elsewhere, assembled from other mythologies, gradually softened until the terror was gone and only the decoration remained. Something was deliberately removed from the picture, and the removal began long before the Renaissance. The first time you know something is genuinely present, something that does not belong to the ordinary world. You do not see it, you smell it. Witnesses across cultures, across centuries, across traditions that have never spoken to one another describe the same sequence. First, a shift in the air, a pressure change as though the atmosphere itself is bracing, then a smell, sharp, electric, like the air after a lightning strike, and beneath that, something metallic. The taste of copper on the back of the tongue. The Hebrew word translated as glory, kavod, does not mean light. It does not mean beauty. It means heavy. It means a physical, measurable weight pressing down on the environment. The presence, in the biblical understanding, is not a spiritual abstraction. It is a density, a mass, something that alters the room it enters the way a gravitational body alters the space around it. The sky in these accounts does not open. It tears. If you have ever stood beside a large waterfall, not a picturesque cascade, but a true falls, thousands of tons of water per second dropping off a cliff, you will know that you do not simply hear it. You feel it. It enters the chest cavity. It registers in the jaw. It vibrates structures inside you that you do not normally notice. The prophet Ezekiel, writing from the banks of the Chebar River in what is now Iraq, reaches for that exact image when he attempts to describe what he hears. A sound like the roar of many waters, a sound like a vast army, a sound that is not noise so much as it is a fundamental frequency, something below sound working on the body at the cellular level. Modern acoustic research has identified frequencies in the range of 18 to 19 hertz, infrasound below the threshold of human hearing, that produce precisely the symptoms Ezekiel documents: nausea, disorientation, a feeling of overwhelming dread, the sense that something invisible is in the room. He was not being poetic, he was being precise. And then, silence. But not an empty silence, a silence that presses on the eardrums the way silence never does. A silence that witnesses describe as a sound in itself. Before Ezekiel can process the sound, his eyes encounter something that the human brain is not designed to pass. Wheels, enormous, impossibly complex wheels, one inside another, spinning and not spinning, moving in 4 directions simultaneously without ever turning to face any of them. Ancient Jewish commentators called them ophanim, and they cover their faces when they write about them. The surfaces of these wheels, in Ezekiel's account, are covered entirely in eyes, not decorative eyes, functional eyes, eyes that move, that focus, that observe. Modern engineers who have attempted to model the geometric behavior Ezekiel describes, the 4-directional movement without axial rotation, have concluded that the object would have to exist partially outside of 3-dimensional space. The wheels are not a metaphor, and Ezekiel makes the observation that will become one of the most unsettling details in all of ancient literature. The wheels, he says, are alive. Daniel's encounter leaves him lying face down on the ground, shaking uncontrollably, all color drained from his face. Ezekiel falls on his face multiple times. The Hebrew word for vision, hazon, shares its linguistic root with a word that means rupture, splitting, tearing. The ancient scribes understood that a vision was not a passive experience. It was an event that happened to the body. Modern psychology would classify what both prophets describe as acute stress response, hyperventilation, muscle failure, dissociation. They document hair loss in the days following, sustained trembling, inability to eat. They are not overcome by beauty. They are in shock. Which brings us to the only thing every angelic being in every account says first, before any message, before any instruction, before any declaration of purpose, the same 2 words or a close variation of them every single time. Do not be afraid. Most readers hear that as a gentle reassurance, a pastoral comfort. But look at it again. Look at the physiological state of the person receiving that command. Look at what their body is already doing. This is not a greeting. This is emergency intervention. This is a direct override of the nervous system attempting to shut itself down. Because in every single account, without exception, the human's first instinct, before thought, before reason, is to die. The question that no one asks is why. There is a word in ancient Hebrew that has no clean translation in any modern language: seraph. Theologians render it as the burning ones. Sunday school teachers picture robed figures with gentle flames. But pull the word out of its celestial context and place it back into the rest of the Hebrew text, and you will find it used in exactly one other setting: the desert, the wilderness. The moment God sends serpents among the Israelites as judgment, serpents so venomous, so lethal, that the text describes their bite as fire moving through the body. The same word, seraph. The burning ones are not burning with warmth. They are burning the way venom burns. They are burning the way something burns that was designed to be impossible to survive. Isaiah encounters them in the year that King Uzziah dies. He's in the temple, and the first thing that happens is the doorposts shake. Not the doors, the posts, the structural anchors of the building. Whatever is entering the room is producing a vibrational output that registers in stone. And then Isaiah sees them, and he does not describe wings first. He does not describe faces first. The first thing he describes is the smoke. The room fills with it, not incense smoke, not ritual smoke. The smoke of something actively, continuously combusting. These beings are not made of light. Light is passive. Light travels in a straight line and waits to be received. What Isaiah describes is a reaction, an ongoing, self-sustaining fusion event wearing the architecture of a living thing, blinding white at the core, bleeding into frequencies the human eye registers as every color simultaneously, which the human brain interprets as no color at all. Just white, just obliteration. And they have 6 wings. Not 2 as every painting insists. 6, 2 they use to cover their faces. 2 they use to cover what the text calls their feet, a standard biblical euphemism for what lies below the waist. And 2, only 2 are used for flight. The mathematics of this arrangement are deliberate. 4 of the 6 wings are not for moving through space. 4 of the 6 wings are shields. They are shielding themselves from what they serve. Even these beings, constructed of living fire, cannot endure direct exposure to the source they orbit. They cover their faces. They cover themselves. They fly with what is left over. What does it mean that something made of fire needs protection from what it faces? Now turn from the seraphim to the cherubim and understand immediately that these are not the same order of being. The Renaissance painter's instinct was to flatten all celestial entities into a single aesthetic: wings, light, gentle expression. But the biblical taxonomy is precise. The cherubim are not seraphim. They do not burn with the same fire. They are something older, something more structural. The gatekeepers, the threshold entities, the beings stationed at the border between what is permitted and what is not. Their form, as Ezekiel records it, is a composite. 4 faces on a single figure: the face of a man, the face of a lion, the face of an ox, and the face of an eagle. Each face represents a corner of the created order, the pinnacle of human cognition, the apex predator of the wild, the foundational strength of the domestic world, the supreme mastery of the sky. They are not random, they are a walking cosmology. A single body that contains all categories of earthly existence simultaneously, fused into one entity that belongs to none of them. In the ancient Near East, in Babylon, in Assyria, in the palace gates of Nineveh, archaeologists have uncovered the same figure over and over in massive carved stone, a hybrid creature with a human face and the body of a winged bull. They guarded the entrances to temples and throne rooms. They were called Lamassu. The entire ancient world understood intuitively what the cherubim were. They were not comfort, they were boundary enforcement. The first 2 cherubim in the biblical record are stationed at the entrance to Eden with a flaming sword, and their assignment has never been rescinded. One face is always watching you, regardless of where you stand. The eyes require their own accounting. Ezekiel returns to them repeatedly, with the obsessive precision of a man trying to document something his vocabulary was not built to contain. The wheels are covered in eyes. The wings are covered in eyes. The bodies themselves, full of eyes around and within. Modern readers assume this is symbolic. Omniscience rendered visually. But Ezekiel is not writing symbolism. He is writing testimony. And the detail that makes this physiologically significant is the one he includes almost as an aside. The eyes do not blink, not occasionally still, never, permanently open, permanent observation, not watching the present moment. The text implies something far more disorienting, that these eyes see across the dimension of time the way human eyes see across the dimension of space. They are not watching what is happening. They are watching what has happened, what is happening, and what will happen simultaneously in the same field of vision. They see the end of this sentence before the first word is spoken. And they move. The entire celestial architecture moves, but not the way anything with a body moves. There are no joints rotating. There is no limb extending and contracting. The text uses the image of a flash of lightning, there and then there, with nothing in between. Not fast travel, the absence of travel. Modern physicists attempting to model this describe it as translocation rather than locomotion. The space around the entity rearranges. The entity does not move through space. Space moves around it. The throne room, as recorded in the Book of Revelation, provides the scale. Not dozens of these entities, not hundreds, millions, millions of them, vibrating at a single unified frequency, producing a unified sound. And beneath them, a sea of glass, not decorative but functional, a resonance chamber, amplifying and focusing the output of millions of beings singing the same note. Scientists who study resonance frequencies have calculated what would happen to human tissue if subjected to concentrated infrasound at that amplitude. The cells would come apart. Not metaphorically, structurally. The sound is loud enough to unmake a human being at the molecular level. This is not a worship service. This is a detonation held in perfect perpetual suspension. In the 10th chapter of the book of Daniel, a man receives a vision that nearly kills him. He is standing beside the Tigris River when the encounter begins, and the description he gives: bronze skin, eyes like torches, a voice like the sound of a multitude, drops every companion in his presence to the ground, unconscious, before the figure even speaks. Daniel himself is left alone, watching, with no strength remaining in his body. But the detail that most readers pass over is not the appearance. It is the timeline. The figure tells Daniel that he dispatched his message the moment Daniel began to pray. 3 weeks earlier, the figure was in transit for 21 days, and the reason for the delay is stated plainly without apology or elaboration. A territorial prince, a governing spiritual entity assigned to the kingdom of Persia, stood against him in the invisible geography between heaven and earth, blocked him, held him in contested airspace for 3 weeks, until Michael arrived. Michael, the one the text calls the Archangel, the only being in the entire biblical record given that specific designation. He is not a symbol of gentle protection. He is a military commander sent as reinforcement into an active engagement. The text does not describe the battle. It does not need to. The 21 days are sufficient. Whatever opposed the messenger was not easily overcome. There are things operating in the atmosphere above human civilization that even Michael, by the biblical account, struggles to defeat. We do not have language for what that means. We should sit with the discomfort of not having language for it. The being the ancient Hebrew text calls Mashit, the destroyer, appears in Egypt on the night of the first Passover, and the mechanics of its operation are forensically precise. It does not descend on the city in a general way. It moves through the streets, targeting specific biological markers. The blood on the doorframes is not symbolic ornamentation. It is a targeting system, a signal to redirect. Whatever the destroyer is reading as it moves through the darkened city, blood is a frequency it recognizes and avoids. Everything unmarked is penetrated, and in every unmarked house, the firstborn dies. No wound, no evidence of physical intrusion. The bodies show nothing. The cause of death in modern medical language would be listed as sudden cardiac arrest or acute respiratory failure, the simple catastrophic withdrawal of the animating principle. The destroyer does not use a weapon in any conventional sense. It removes something. It withdraws what was sustaining the breath, and then it moves to the next house. This is not a battle. It is an administrative action. The morning after is a city without a sound that should be there. 40 years later, the army of Assyria camps outside the walls of Jerusalem. 185,000 soldiers. Sennacherib's elite force, the instrument that had already dismantled every other fortified city in its path. The siege is airtight. The city has no military solution. And then the text records a single sentence that stops the narrative cold. That night, an angel of the Lord went out. 1. And in the morning, 185,000 soldiers were dead. No battle is described because no battle occurred. There is no account of a weapon, no duration, no engagement, just a before and an after, separated by a single night. Modern epidemiologists studying the account have noted that the symptom profile, sudden mass death with no visible trauma, concentrated in a specific geographic area overnight, is consistent with a highly localized, acutely lethal biological event. Some have proposed a directed outbreak of the bubonic plague or a weaponized form of anthrax. These proposals are not wrong in their mechanics. They are simply missing the agency behind the mechanics. One entity, moving through an encampment of trained soldiers in the dark, not fighting but harvesting. It was not a battle. The word for what it was is something colder. Sodom does not burn like a city on fire. The description in Genesis carries specific details that separate it from ordinary combustion. Sulfur raining from the sky, the entire plain igniting simultaneously, the smoke rising like the smoke of a furnace. Not the rolling organic smoke of burning wood and fabric, but the dense column smoke of an industrial process. Lot's wife, turning back, becoming a pillar of salt. The word translated as salt in the Hebrew, melach, describes something desiccated, dehydrated at a fundamental level. The moisture extracted. What thermal events at extreme temperatures do to biological tissue, in the fraction of a second the body cannot react to, matches that description with uncomfortable precision. The two beings who lead Lot's family out of the city do not look back, not because they are indifferent, because they know the yield. They calculated the radius before they arrived. Jacob is alone at the ford of Jabbok when the man appears, and immediately the text does something unusual. It does not describe the arrival. There is no approach, no appearance out of light, no atmospheric disruption. One moment Jacob is alone, the next he is in a grip, and they wrestle all night. Not a spiritual wrestling, a physical, grinding, exhausting, full-body struggle that lasts until the breaking of dawn. This is not symbolic. Jacob wakes with a dislocated hip. The injury is structural, confirmed by the text, remembered in Jewish dietary practice to this day. The sinew of the hip socket, a specific anatomical wound from a specific anatomical encounter. The being ends the struggle with a touch. Not a throw, not a strike, a touch to the hip socket and the joint separates. Calculated force applied with absolute precision, enough to disable without destroying. And when Jacob demands a blessing, the being asks him a question instead. What is your name? The exchange of names is the oldest acknowledgement of power in the ancient world. To know a name is to hold leverage over what the name belongs to. And the being refuses, deflects, asks the question back. Jacob does not win this encounter. Jacob survives it. And in the morning, he is limping. The limp is the point. The limp is the proof. He demanded a blessing from something that could have ended him with a touch. And what he received was a wound he would carry for the rest of his life. That, the text implies, was the blessing. The sword over Jerusalem appears in the sky above the threshing floor of Araunah, and David is the only one who can see it. An enormous figure positioned between heaven and earth, with a drawn sword extended over the city. The people below him see only the plague moving through the streets. Only the king sees the hand holding it. The sword is described as moshelet, drawn, active, fully extended in the direction of intent, not raised in threat, already in motion. And then the hand stops, not because the destruction is complete, because the command changes. The hand stops mid-arc, over a specific piece of ground, and that piece of ground becomes, in subsequent generations, the foundation of the temple. The place where the sword stopped is the place where the altar was built. Somewhere beneath the architecture of worship, there is still the outline of where the blade came to rest. We only see the weapon when it is already too late to move. In the year 325 AD, the Emperor Constantine convened a council at Nicaea that would reshape the architecture of Western civilization in ways that are still load-bearing today. The stated purpose was theological, to resolve doctrinal disputes about the nature of Christ. But something else happened in the margins of that council. Something quieter and, in the long arc of history, far more consequential. The decision was made, not in a single vote, but in a gradual, practical consensus to make the faith accessible, to make it governable. Rome had a fractured empire and a restless population, and the version of the divine that Ezekiel had seen by the Chebar River, the version that left trained prophets lying face down in the dirt, shaking, losing pigmentation from their hair, was not a version that filled civic buildings with compliant citizens. So the softening began. It did not happen violently. It happened the way all great erasures happen, through 1,000 small aesthetic decisions made by people who believed they were simply being practical. A painter chooses softer light. A sculptor smooths an edge. A theologian selects a translation that opens rather than closes. And across 3 centuries of accumulated choices, the being that produced ozone in a sealed room and vibrated stone doorposts with its presence became something that could be placed above a cradle without frightening the child. The wings are the most visible evidence of the operation. The early church had no wings on its celestial figures. The first angelic wings in Christian iconography appear in the late 4th century, and art historians have traced their origin without ambiguity. They come from Nike, the Greek goddess of victory, always depicted airborne, always in motion, wings spread in triumphant flight. The Romans had absorbed her as Victoria. And when the Christian artists of the late Empire needed a visual shorthand for divine messenger, something that communicated speed, elevation, otherworldly origin, they borrowed the wings from a goddess of military victory and attached them to beings the text had never described that way. The terror was not removed in one decision. It was feathered out slowly until it was gone. The medieval imagination continued the work. The Ophanim, the living wheels, the dimensional machinery covered in eyes became, in the illuminated manuscripts of the 12th and 13th centuries, increasingly decorative. The wheels softened into halos. The eyes became patterns. The 4-faced cherubim were gradually reduced to a single face, always serene, always male, always framed in gradually multiplying feathers. By the time the Renaissance painters took the tradition in hand, the raw material had already been pre-processed into something workable. Raphael could paint what he painted because 600 years of progressive domestication had already removed everything that could not be made beautiful by a brush. Feathers were simply easier to render than living fire. That is the honest explanation, and it is more damning than any conspiracy. The terror was not suppressed because it was dangerous. It was suppressed because it was difficult. Then came the 19th century and the final blow. The putti, the chubby wingless infants of Roman decorative art, fertility symbols, garden ornaments, were absorbed into Christian iconography and labeled cherubim. The same word the text uses for the entities that guard the boundary of Eden with weapons of fire. The same classification as the 4-faced, many-eyed dimensional gatekeepers that Ezekiel spent chapters trying to document. Reduced by the Victorian moral imagination's need for sanitized sentiment to pink-cheeked babies on greeting cards. A being that, by the biblical record, could depopulate an army camp overnight became the mascot of confectionery boxes and Valentine's Day. We did not replace the image with a lie. We replaced a tiger with a kitten and called them the same animal. Here is what makes the modern era interesting. In the decades following the Second World War, a new category of reported encounter entered the cultural record: lights in the sky, craft moving in ways that violated the known physics of aerodynamics. No wings, no exhaust, instantaneous directional changes, translocation rather than travel. Witnesses describing a paralysis that preceded the encounter. A hum felt in the chest rather than heard with the ears. A smell of ozone, a metallic taste. Missing time, the sensation of being observed by something that sees more of you than your surface. The overlap with the ancient record is not approximate, it is categorical. The sensory profile Ezekiel documents and the sensory profile reported by UAP witnesses in the 20th and 21st centuries share the same architecture, the same atmospheric precursors, the same physiological responses, the same fundamental quality of an encounter with something that exists in more dimensions than the witness has access to. Whether one calls them messengers or visitors, the phenomenology is identical. The ancient world had a taxonomy for these encounters. They called them angels. The modern world lost the taxonomy and kept the experience. Perhaps the most unsettling philosophical question the full record generates is not whether these beings are real. The evidence across cultures and centuries for encounters with non-human intelligence of this specific profile is too consistent to dismiss. The unsettling question is why the sanitization was necessary for human civilization to continue functioning. Thinkers who have sat with the full weight of the biblical cosmology, not the greeting card version, but the forensic version, the Ezekiel version, the Daniel version, have noted what might be called a threshold problem. Human social organization depends on a shared assumption of comprehensibility. The assumption that the world, at its foundation, operates according to principles the human mind can eventually map. The angel, in its actual biblical form, annihilates that assumption completely. A being that moves without moving, that sees without looking, that kills without weapons, that operates in the spaces between moments. Its existence is not merely supernatural. It is a direct structural threat to the human sense of agency. If we saw them as they are, and knew them as they are, and understood that they have always been here, the cognitive architecture that allows for commerce, governance, art, relationship, all of it depends on a certain agreed-upon story about what kind of universe this is. That story does not survive contact with the actual record. The mask, in other words, was never for the angels. It was for us. The softness, the feathers, the pink-cheeked babies, they are not a distortion of the truth. They are a mercy, a deliberate narrowing of the aperture so that the light does not blind the eye looking through it. The church did not hide the terror out of malice. It hid the terror out of something closer to compassion. Because the alternative, the full, unfiltered, forensically accurate picture of what moves through the invisible architecture of this world, is a picture the human mind approaches only in fragments, only in controlled doses, and only at significant cost. Ask Daniel. Ask Ezekiel. Ask Jacob, who went in whole and came out limping. The book of Revelation ends not with peace, but with a throne. And around that throne, the same figures that opened the whole record. The living ones, the eyes that do not close, the wheels that move in all directions without turning. The sound, like many waters, like an army, like a detonation held permanently at the moment before detonation. And somewhere in that final vision, almost incidental, the way the most important details always are, the note that the beings around the throne do not rest. Day or night, they have not rested. They will not rest. They have been there since before the first word of the text was written, and they will be there after the last word is read. They never left. We simply decided, at some point in the long archaeology of our fear, to stop looking up. The wheel is still turning. The eye is still open. And somewhere in the frequency beneath the threshold of human hearing, in the register that produces nausea and dread and the ancient animal certainty that something enormous is in the room, the sound continues. It has always continued.